My niece scoffed at the iPad mini I gave her for Christmas, so I calmly took back 16 gifts and canceled the mortgage autopay. I thought I was buying love. I was wrong. That Christmas morning, when my own niece threw my expensive gift at me, laughing, and my family just watched, it wasn't just a gift she tossed. It was years of my generosity, my sacrifice, and frankly, my dignity, right back in my face. And that was the moment I decided, no more. It all started so innocently. Christmas morning, and there I was, standing in my parents' living room, lukewarm coffee in hand. My niece, all wide-eyed excitement, ripped open the gift I'd picked out just for her. For a split second, her face was blank. Then, she let out this dismissive laugh, like I'd just handed her a used sock. She held up the box for everyone to see. An iPad mini, she practically sneered. That's all I get? Before I could even process her words, she tossed it straight at my chest. It wasn't hard enough to bruise, but it was hard enough to make a very clear point. The room erupted. Not in genuine laughter, but that awful, uncomfortable kind people use when they don't want to admit something truly ugly just happened. My son, Ethan, was sitting cross-legged on the rug, a quiet, polite 8-year-old. He flinched like the iPad had hit him instead of me. My heart ached just looking at him. He'd spent the whole drive over talking about how maybe Grandpa would finally hang his drawing on the fridge this year. Now, I watched his small hands clench around the paper snowflake he'd brought as a gift for Grandma. My mom didn't say a word. She just took a slow sip of her mimosa, a faint smile playing on her lips, as if this whole spectacle was just charming. My sister, Carrera, actually smirked, like her daughter had just delivered the punchline to a brilliant joke. And my dad? My dad just leaned back in his recliner and drawled, "She's just being honest." My throat went tight. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I didn't cause a scene. I just stood up. I walked over to the pile of gifts I'd brought, 16 wrapped boxes, all carefully labeled, all picked out with what I thought was love. I started collecting them. Tape crinkled under my fingers. Ribbon bows slid loose. Carrera blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. "Arnold," she stammered, "what are you doing?" I didn't answer. I just kept gathering. These gifts were for everyone, my parents, my sister and her husband, my niece, my nephew, the cousins who always seemed to stop by, even my dad's neighbor who magically appeared at every family holiday and always left with a pricey bottle of something. I bought them all anyway, because that's what I always did. I stacked the boxes in my arms until I could barely see over them, then made 2 trips out to my car. As I was heading back for the last load, my dad finally raised his voice. "Don't be dramatic," he shouted, like I'd just knocked over the Christmas tree. I turned back at the door, keys already in my hand, my voice as calm as I could possibly make it. "I'm not," I said. Then, I delivered the sentence that made the entire room's temperature drop. "But tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm updating the mortgage autopay." My dad went silent so fast it was almost comical. Not one more laugh, not one more smirk. Just the soft rustle of wrapping paper settling and the low hum of the heater kicking on. Ethan stood up slowly and walked to my side, without me even calling him. He didn't ask questions. He just slipped his small hand into mine, like he already understood this wasn't just about one iPad. As we walked out, I heard Carrera mutter, "You're really going to ruin Christmas over a joke?" I didn't even look back. Because that wasn't the joke. The real joke was how long I'd been letting them use me. Let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm Arnold. I was 39 then, living in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. I'm a dentist running a small practice, and I work more hours than I like to admit. I'm also a single dad. Ethan's mom left when he was 3. No big dramatic story, just a slow fade into, "I can't do this anymore," and then she was gone. So it's always been me and Ethan. Homework at the kitchen table, Saturday morning pancakes, school concerts where I clapped too loud because I knew I was the only parent there just for him. If you asked anyone in my family, I was the stable one. And in my family, the stable one translated to one thing: wallet. It started small, like it always does. My parents needed help after my dad retired early. He called it retirement, I called it quitting after he got into a fight with his boss and refused to work under anyone again. Their mortgage wasn't paid off, not even close. So, I stepped in. I set up the autopay from my account because Dad didn't trust online banking. Every single month, like clockwork, that payment went out. $1,842.17. At first, my mom would say thank you. Then it became normal. Then it became expected. Then, it became something they acted like they'd earned. If the payment ever processed a day late because of a holiday, my dad would text me like I'd committed a crime. Mortgage didn't go through. Fix it. No, hey, hope you're okay. Just that. And it wasn't just the mortgage. It was the property taxes, just this once. It was their HVAC replacement when it died in July. It was my mom's dental implants, which she insisted she shouldn't have to pay for because, Arnold, you're a dentist. Then there was Carrara's emergency every other month. Carrara was 36, married, 2 kids, constantly struggling, constantly just about to get on her feet. One month it was the minivan payment. Another month, private dance lessons for my niece because she's talented, Arnold, don't crush her dreams. Another month, it was their credit card minimum because they'd had a tough season. I helped because I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was family. And every time I tried to pull back, even a little, something would happen. A comment. A slight. A little reminder that Ethan and I were guests in the family, not really part of the center of it. Ethan noticed things long before I wanted him to. He noticed Grandma always had his cousin's favorite snacks, but never his. He noticed that his cousins got big, matching stockings with their names stitched on, and he got a plain red one someone clearly bought last minute. He noticed that when family photos happened, Carrara's kids were pulled into the middle, and Ethan got placed on the edge, like an accessory. He never complained. He just got quieter. One Thanksgiving, when he was 6, my mom handed out slices of pie. My nephew got the biggest slice. My niece got whipped cream shaped like a perfect swirl. Ethan got a thin piece with the crust broken off. He didn't cry. He just whispered to me, "It's okay, Dad. I don't need much." That sentence hit me harder than anything. Because no kid should learn to shrink to survive family time. But I kept going anyway. I kept paying, kept showing up, kept buying gifts too expensive for people who barely acted like they liked us. I thought if I stayed generous, they'd stay kind. I thought if I stayed useful, they'd stay loving. I didn't want to admit the truth, they weren't loving. They were just comfortable. That Christmas morning, the iPad incident wasn't the first sign. It was just the clearest one. I had chosen the iPad mini after my niece begged for one all year. I didn't even want to give her something that expensive, not after the way she talked to Ethan sometimes. But I did it because Carrara kept texting me. She's been working so hard in school. She's been such a good helper. She really deserves something big. Carrara didn't say please. She never said, if you can. She just wrote like I was the family's personal Amazon account. So I bought it. I also bought my nephew a gaming headset. My mom got a new stand mixer because she'd been complaining hers was old and ugly. My dad got a fancy smartwatch he'd pointed at in a store 2 months earlier, saying, "Must be nice to waste money like that." Gift cards for the cousins. Warm winter boots for Ethan's little cousin because Carrara said she couldn't afford them. 16 gifts. Carefully wrapped. Labeled. Bows. The whole thing. And the moment my niece didn't feel impressed enough, she threw it at me like I was nothing, like my effort was a joke. And the worst part? The way Ethan looked at me. Not angry, just embarrassed. Like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. That was my last straw. Not the iPad. Not the laughter. That look on my son's face. Because I could take disrespect. I'd been swallowing it for years. But I wasn't going to teach my kid that love means letting people treat you like trash. That night, back at our house, I didn't decorate more. I didn't force cheer. I made Ethan grilled cheese and tomato soup. He sat at the kitchen island, still in his Christmas sweater, rubbing the edge of his paper snowflake between his fingers. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. That question cracked something inside me. I set my bowl down and took a breath. "No," I said. "You didn't do anything wrong." He nodded, like he wanted to believe me, but wasn't entirely convinced. I reached for his little drawing folder, the one he always carried to family events because he liked bringing people pictures. He opened it and showed me the one he'd made for my parents. Their house, a big tree, stick figures holding hands. He had written, "Merry Christmas, Grandpa plus Grandma," in careful block letters. "It's okay," he said again, too quickly. "We can just stay home next time." I stared at that drawing and felt my jaw tighten. We weren't going to just stay home next time. We were going to stop funding the people who made my child feel unwanted. So after Ethan went to bed, I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. The kind of quiet where you can hear the fridge hum and the heater click. I logged into my bank. There it was, mortgage autopay, $1,842.17, scheduled monthly. I hovered over it for a second. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I wasn't doing this out of rage. I was doing it out of clarity. I clicked. I selected Edit Payment. I changed the funding account from my checking to none. Then I hit Cancel Autopay. A warning popped up, canceling this recurring payment may result in missed payments. I stared at it. Then I clicked Confirm. The confirmation screen loaded. "Your recurring payment has been canceled." I took a screenshot. Then I opened a second tab and logged into the joint account I'd set up years ago for family expenses. That account was where I'd been funneling money for Carrera and my parents to use for emergencies. It wasn't supposed to be a free-for-all. But it had become one. I transferred the remaining balance, a paltry $13.28, back into my main account. Then I closed it. The bank asked for a reason. I typed "no longer needed." Because I didn't owe them a paragraph. I owed Ethan protection. I set my alarm for 8:45 a.m. Not because I had more to do with the bank, but because I knew the second my dad woke up and checked his account, the panic would start. And I wanted to be awake and steady when it did. At 9:07 a.m., my phone rang. "Dad." I let it ring twice, then answered. "Morning," I said. No warmth, no anger. Just a fact. His voice was sharp, tight. "What did you do?" I didn't pretend not to know. "I canceled the autopay," I said. A beat of silence. Then he snapped, "You can't do that." I almost laughed. He said it like the mortgage belonged to me, like I was canceling my own obligation. "It's your mortgage," I said. "You can pay it." My mom's voice came through in the background, muffled, but frantic. "What is he saying? Tell him to stop." Dad lowered his voice, trying to sound reasonable. "Arnold, you're upset. Fine. But you don't punish us over a kid's comment." There it was. A kid's comment. Like my niece throwing a $500 plus gift at me was normal. Like everyone laughing while Ethan sat there, shrinking, was a harmless moment. I kept my voice even. "It wasn't one comment," I said. "It's been years." He tried to interrupt. I continued anyway. "You don't get to treat my son like he's optional and still expect me to fund your life." Dad exhaled hard. "You're being dramatic." Same word as yesterday. Same script. I leaned back in my chair and looked at the Christmas tree in our living room. Smaller than my parents', a little lopsided, covered in Ethan's handmade ornaments. "I'm not," I said. "I'm just done." My dad's tone changed fast. Not softer, but desperate. "Arnold, we counted on you." Of course they did. That was the whole problem. "You shouldn't have," I said. He raised his voice again. "So what? You're cutting us off? All because Carrara's kid mouthed off? I didn't take the bait. I'm not your backup bank, I said. And Ethan and I won't be spending holidays where we're laughed at. He went quiet. Not because he understood. Because he was doing the math. Because he knew exactly how much he'd been leaning on me. My mom took the phone, her voice shaky, like she was about to cry. Arnold, honey, please. We didn't mean anything by it. She's a teenager. You know how kids are. I stared at the wall for a second, remembering Ethan's face. I know how my kid is, I said. He's kind. He's quiet. He tries hard. And you all make him feel small. She sniffed. So, what do we do? That question almost made me laugh again, because it wasn't how do we fix what we did to Ethan. It was how do we fix the money problem. You figure it out, I said. Then, because I still wasn't cruel, I added, I'm not blocking you. I'm not screaming. But the money is done. That's the boundary. My mom whispered, this is going to ruin the family. I swallowed. No, I said. You did that. I'm just not paying for it anymore. Then I ended the call. The fallout came in waves. First, it was Dad calling over and over, like if he called enough, I'd fold. Then, it was Carrara texting paragraphs. You embarrassed my daughter. She didn't mean it like that. You're acting like some hero. Mom is crying. Then the guilt trips got more specific. Carrara, do you know what happens if Dad misses the mortgage? They could lose the house. I stared at that message for a long time. Because I did know. I'd known for years. That's why I kept paying. That's why I'd let them use me. But then I looked at Ethan, sitting on the floor, building a Lego set. Humming to himself, finally relaxed because we weren't driving to someone else's house to be tolerated. And I realized something simple, if my parents lost the house, it wouldn't be because I stopped paying. It would be because they built their whole life around assuming I always would. That wasn't my emergency to solve anymore. Carrara showed up at my office 2 days later. Not for a dental appointment. Just storming into my waiting room like she owned the place. My receptionist's eyes went wide. Sir, it's fine, I said, standing up. I walked Carrara into my private office and closed the door. She didn't sit. She crossed her arms and said, so, you're really doing this? I stayed calm. Yes. Her voice cracked, but not from sadness, from anger. You're punishing Mom and Dad because my daughter didn't like a gift. I blinked slowly. That's not what happened, I said. And you know it. She scoffed. She's a teenager. She's dramatic. She didn't throw it hard. I stared at Carrara until she got uncomfortable. Ethan was sitting right there, I said. And everyone laughed. Carrara rolled her eyes. Oh my God, Arnold. He's a kid. He'll forget. That sentence made my stomach turn. Because it wasn't true. Kids remember the feeling. They remember who protected them. They remember who didn't. I didn't raise my voice. I just said, you don't get to decide what my son forgets. Carrara's face tightened. Then she tried a new angle. So what? You're going to let them lose everything after everything they did for you? I almost asked, like what? But I didn't. I kept it simple. I did a lot for them, I said. I've been doing it for years. And they've been taking it while treating Ethan like he's less. Carrara's eyes flicked away for half a second. That told me she knew. She'd seen the little things. She just benefited from pretending they didn't matter. Then she did what Carrara always did when she couldn't win on facts. She went for the emotional punch. You're always so high and mighty because you're a dentist, she sneered. Like you're better than us. I felt my jaw clench, but I stayed steady. I don't think I'm better, I said. I think Ethan deserves better. Carrera opened her mouth, then shut it, and then she said the quiet part out loud. So, what am I supposed to do when I need help? There it was. Not, how do we make things right? Not, I'm sorry Ethan was hurt. Just, what about my money? I nodded once. You budget, I said. You figure it out like every other adult. Carrera's face went red. You're unbelievable. I walked to my office door and opened it. I'm not arguing, I said. This conversation is over. Carrera stood there a second longer, like she expected me to chase her. I didn't. She left. And my receptionist whispered, "Are you okay?" I exhaled. I am, I said. For the first time in a long time, I meant it. The next week was a flood of messages. My dad left a voicemail where he sounded like he was trying to perform dignity. I don't know who you think you are, but you don't do this to your parents. My mom left one that sounded softer, but still completely wrong. We're family. Family helps family. I didn't call back. I didn't explain again. Because boundaries aren't negotiations. They're statements. The only person I explained things to was Ethan. Not in a heavy way, just honest. We were brushing teeth one night when he asked, "Are we going to Grandma's again?" I looked at him in the mirror. "No," I said. "Not for a while." He paused, toothbrush in his mouth. Did they not want us there? My throat tightened again. But I didn't lie. Sometimes people don't know how to be kind, I said. And I'm not going to put you in places that make you feel bad. Ethan swallowed, then nodded. And then he surprised me. Okay, he said. Can we do Christmas at home next year? With pancakes? I laughed softly. With pancakes, I promised. In January, the consequences got real for them. Not for me. For them. Dad missed the first payment. Not because he couldn't scrape together anything. Because he was stubborn, because he thought I'd panic and fix it. Instead, he got a late notice. Then another. Then he called me again, his voice shaking with anger. You're really going to let this happen? I didn't match his tone. You're really going to let your own mortgage happen? I corrected. He cursed under his breath. Then came the next level of manipulation. My aunt called. Not to ask how Ethan was. Not to ask why we disappeared. She called to mediate. Arnold, she said, your parents are stressed. Your dad's blood pressure. I stopped her gently. I'm not discussing their health as a bargaining chip, I said. She huffed. You know they love you. I didn't argue. I just said the truth. Love doesn't look like humiliating my kid and expecting me to keep funding them. She went quiet. Then she said, so, you're really cutting them off? Yes, I said. I am. She sighed like I'd disappointed her. All right, she said. Well, I hope you can live with yourself. I looked at Ethan across the room, building another Lego set, peaceful. I can, I said, and I hung up. By spring, my parents had refinanced. Not because they wanted to, but because they had to. They asked Carrera for help. Carrera asked my uncle. My uncle said no. They finally did what they should have done years ago. They figured it out without me. And that's when the apologies started. Not real ones. Convenient ones. My mom showed up at my house one Saturday with a grocery store pie and watery eyes. Ethan was in the backyard, tossing a tennis ball for our dog. My mom stood on my porch and said, "Can we talk?" I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. She looked offended by that, like she deserved my living room. I'm sorry about Christmas, she said quickly. It got out of hand. I waited. She added, your niece was rude. Still waiting. Then she said, we didn't mean to hurt Ethan. That was the